Can you hear that? No.
I heard something for a second, but I don't hear anything now.
I don't know if so my phone and laptop and all the Apple things are all connected, and my phone started ringing. It started ringing on the laptop, and apparently you couldn't hear it. I wasn't sure.
No,
It's
I didn't
like
hear it.
when
So,
you're on the phone and you're driving with somebody and your GPS is talking over them and you can't really hear,
yeah.
Wow, it's funny. So the Open just kicked off. The first workout was a absolutely disgusting one. It was a chipper style where the box jumps or box step ups basically stayed at 18, and then you would go 20 wall balls, then 18, 30 wall balls, 18, up to 66, and then back down 40 or 50, 40, 30, all the way down to 20.
Mm.
So, anyways, they did it last night, and the guy that won the workout on the live announcement, Colt Mertens, short dude, this motherfucker caught the ball in the air, turned around, and started doing his box step ups. He went unbroken the entire time. It was absolutely disgusting. Safe to say, and he barely finished. So safe to say, most people are not going to finish that one
Hmm.
as we go through. But what I'll tell you was pretty cool is Joe decided to give it a shot last night. One of the athletes here, he's been really hammering down on his accessory work and stuff. And he came in this morning and was like, "Yeah, I think I can get a better score." And after doing a shit ton of wall balls and box jumps and everything else, he was uh, feeling good enough to do it again and improved his score. So it's pretty funny how that works, right? The
Yeah.
When you're
That's
not constantly doing a bunch of metcons and beating your body up, you're doing all this high volume accessory work and finishers and things like that. You can, again, not ideal, right? You want to get your best score and be
mm,
done with it once,
hmm,
but if you aren't happy with it, because athletes, they're never happy
hmm,
with anything. So he felt completely okay, came in,
mm.
redid it, did more than he did last time, and still feels completely okay. And he's probably in there doing accessories right now.
Well, it shows that his work capacity is high, that he can turn around, and do it again, and make an improvement because whether he gamed it wrong or whatever he felt that he was lacking, he had the ability to come back. That's huge, and and obviously, like, right, you go back and probably do an accessory work because that's one thing people I think don't realize is our accessory work is laid up to get you to move optimally. We optimize your leverages, and therefore we want to eliminate as much of the CrossFit slop as we can. So each repetition is more efficient, which means less energy, which means you can go faster, putting out the same amount of energy. Um, in those movements. But I think people need to take a look at metcons and workouts like this in a little different way. Most people look at this like this is the workout. Now, don't get me wrong, there is conditioning aspects, and this is a workout. But to me, your open WODs, it's a tester. To me, you take a CrossFit athlete and the workouts they do, their WODs, that is a tester to show you how well laid out your training protocol is. So the games, all the workouts at the games, the open, things like that, those are just testers. It's like you take a football team. They don't play a football game every day of the week just on Sunday. So the pro team on Sunday plays another football game on Sunday. No, they do strength and conditioning work. They do agility work. They work on different plays. They look at film. They read the team that they're going against, and they learn from what the mistakes they made the week before, and they try to eliminate those mistakes through different drills and different tools that they have. And then the game the following week shows how well laid out the training protocol was. Maybe you didn't win, but what if you made a 60-70% improvement on all the things that you didn't like that you saw as a coach? Well, then we're going to keep going with a similar type of tactic that we used the previous week, and after maybe another week we might clear it 100% because we cleared it 60% the first time, we have another 40% to go. What I'll do is, like, the next game, maybe we win, but I noticed that we cleaned up everything but about 10%. Now I'm probably going to have to come up with some new tools, utilize different tools to clear that last 10%. I've probably got as much out of the tools that I've utilized already. That's where the constantly vary comes in at, You look at football teams, soccer teams, a boxer, when they have their boxing match, that's the tester to show them how well laid out the training protocol was. You look at people in MMA, they're not getting in fights from morning to night. You know, they're working on drills, they're working on conditioning, they're working on agility, they're working on explosive power, they're working on jiu-jitsu, they're working on wrestling, they're working on judo, they're working on boxing, kickboxing, Thai kickboxing, Dutch style kickboxing. You know, like who are they fighting? What are the things? We can't be the best at everything and say MMA, right? What we need to do is have the right combination to beat the person who's coming up next and start putting tools together for future opponents that'll come up. Your fight is the tester to how well laid out your training protocol is. As a CrossFit competitor, you're not seeing anybody win the games only doing CrossFit. That's not knocking CrossFit. CrossFit's awesome. Like, you look at just someone doing WODs, right? It's been it will thoroughly, you know, look, the way I look at it, produced a lot of world record holders. So I've seen people at the pinnacle, at the peak of sport. I was Westside Barbell. I've seen what happens when you have the best in the world, and people not only the best but annihilating the second best. Like, I'm talking, like, you know, I've seen athletes that are so far beyond the second place person, and so, you know, I was thoroughly impressed when we started with CrossFit, and seeing the condition, the strength, overall output of athletes is amazing. But all sports evolve and everything takes off, and so what that did is it took the generalist and it slayed, you know, it made people phenomenal generalists. You look at the person in the average gym, they get in great shape. But then you say, how can we go farther? How can I be better at being a generalist? Well, I've always said, if you want to be the best specialist you can be, you also have to learn from a generalist, because you're going to need a general overall conditioning to increase work capacity to become the best specialist you can be. But if you want to be the best generalist you can be, you have to learn from a specialist, because you have to take up these little details. You know, like an Olympic lifting coach who has at the highest level. You look at gymnastics, you need a really good gymnastics coach to get the most efficient movement in your gymnastics. You need a strength coach to optimize the different types of strengths or speeds that you are required for in your sport, and to use special exercises to optimize leverages and optimize output for what's going to come your way. So therefore, it turns it back, and not that it doesn't give you output gains, not that CrossFit doesn't give you work capacity, it does all those things, but you don't see anybody in the top 10 male-female at the CrossFit Games who are only doing WODs to get better at the CrossFit Games. So don't try to be the only one doing that, because you will not reach your goals, you know? So...
Hell yeah. So I guess that's a really good segue into programming philosophy, really, when it comes down to accessory movement. So if you have an athlete that you're working with, and like, let's say for this workout, for instance, that just came up because you said, hey, this is a tester, let's see how well your training protocol is laid out. You're going to do this unknown workout. They do it. They see how they rank amongst the best. And then you start talking with your athlete, or maybe you're noticing things break down. So I think a lot of people were surprised at the level of shoulder stamina this one required.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of legs, obviously. That makes sense. You're doing wall balls, you're squatting, you're box jumping, you're doing weighted step-ups. All those things are blasting the legs. But when people were doing the weighted step-ups, I could just see everybody's eyes like, fuck, and they're trying to shake their arms out because they're under this, like, constant tension. So what are some ways we can attack that? What are some ways we can maybe make somebody faster out of the squat so that they don't have to spend as much time under tension, things like that?
So, okay, you know, obviously faster is our speed work, right? But let's look at accessories. So this is where it kind of gets cool to me. I watch someone who has the optimal mobility in their hips, and as they fatigue, their knees start to come in a wall ball, right? Now I know, like, a glute ham raise is excellent for them. Okay, now let's say I watch the person and during the wall ball, when they're going to throw the ball, they're starting to suffer and their hips are slow. They don't have really good fast firing hips, so they're losing momentum, and it's all in their shoulders and arms. Their arms are getting fatigued and their shoulders are getting fatigued, and they are not creating velocity through the squat part of the thruster to get that going. Now I'm looking at dimmels. Because if I take a dimmel, for most people out there, if you don't know what a dimmel is, just think of like a Romanian deadlift. But here's the key component to it. We ballistically lower the bar. I mean, we lower the bar as fast as we can. Once it hits knee height, we reverse it as fast as we can, squeeze and pop our glutes real hard. And not an Olympic lift where you shrug your shoulders and you bring the bar up. We literally kick the bar away from us with our hips. It goes straight out. And so you can see why that's important. Drop right below the knees as fast as you can, reverse it.
Yeah, so the bar going out isn't them excessively leaning back or
Correct.
throwing it out with their shoulders.
Correct.
It's that lockout, it's that violent lockout speed. So the hips are accelerating so
Yep.
fast that when they hit the bar, energy
It
transfer
pops.
happens and
Correct.
that bar shoots out. Just wanted to
No, that's
clarify that for
correct,
anybody
Justin,
who might be
because
listening because I've seen some wild examples of
yeah,
things.
no, it's a highly butchered exercise, in especially in CrossFit, and it's not because anybody in CrossFit is doing anything bad. It's just because they do a lot of Olympic lifting. So if I take a power lifter who's never Olympic lifted before and said, "Hey, have you done a Romanian deadlift?" Yes. Okay, let's watch you do it ballistically and lower it faster, 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 faster. Now squeeze your glutes harder, faster. And you start coaching them through it. It's easier for them to get than someone who's done Olympic lifting because they want to shrug the bar and they want to over exaggerate their hip position, and that is not creating velocity through how fast you can squeeze your glutes and how powerful your hips are. That's a completely different thing.
And I like how you said it. You're looking at their hips in that movement. So are their hips fatiguing? Are their hips slow to fire? Because that's going to put ultimately more demand on the shoulders and the arms to do the work. But also, when you talk about Olympic lifting, right? There's things that are supposed to happen in a sequential order, right? You're
Yep.
supposed to come to full hip extension, then it hands off to the shoulders, then you pull it under. So these dimmels not only apply to wall balls and deadlifts and those kind of things, it could make you faster hips in a clean or a snatch, and then the bar is hitting and it's still coming up and out, but you're not forcing it to with this big rainbow thing that was kind of butchered in Olympic lifting.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of Olympic lifting coaches get frustrated with CrossFit athletes who are like banging the bar off of their quads, and it's like, hey, this is a very simple fix to teach people how to actually accelerate through the hips in a correct sequential order. You do enough Dimmel deadlifts, and now you understand what hip extension feels like, what violent hip extension feels like, what it feels like to accelerate into a bar. And then from there, the bar is actually weightless for a moment because it's flying out. You can see that with our lifters. I just posted a video of one of your guys doing it. And then that's when you capitalize on that moment of weightlessness and you get under the bar. So I think,
Oh.
Olympic lifting coaches that don't understand that and that are, bastardizing, like, hey, CrossFitters are doing this. To your point, hey, they're not specialists, they're generalists. But as a specialist, if you don't have the tool to fix that for that generalist,
Yep.
then all you're doing is just, paying lip service to them. You're not actually fixing anything. So a Dimmel deadlift, great tool to
Yeah.
teach people how to lock out.
Great for powerlifting, great for Olympic lifting. You have a huge point there. It's 100% correct. Let's talk about, I'm going to talk about, I just want to revisit the thruster for a second, okay? And to give you guys an idea, this is an exercise that I don't agree with CrossFit slop, okay? I know that can be controversial. What I'm going to say is this. I get we're not there yet. And what I mean by that is all sports evolve, right? It means that the goal should be to eventually get someone ready, truly ready for anything at any time, which means they would move perfectly through range of motion, even in a fatigue state, because that is structurally how they're built and what they're ready for. That is not the case yet. So let's take a look at a thruster. If I see someone come down and on the way down, right near the bottom, their knees cave in, on the way back up, the knees come back out in the same spot, I know that's a mobility issue. They don't have optimal mobility to do a thruster properly. Okay? So I'm going to look at their hips. Check their internal external rotation in their hips.
Well,
Then,
that trickles
yep.
up and downstream too.
Yeah.
You're talking about hips, and what most people see is the finish position.
Yep.
In the finish position, they're overextended in the back. They're maybe slightly out in front of the frontal plane, so it's technically not a rep. And they're not able to get into those positions. But it starts at the bottom, like you're talking about. Like, as soon as they start moving, what happened? Did they brace their midline to go down into that? Because if they didn't, then everything downstream and upstream is going to be, not to jump around all over the place.
No, yeah.
Midline work is so important too. Teaching them how to violently contract and
Yeah.
brace and be able to hold that through a period of time.
Well, and typically, and not that it doesn't show up once in a while, but I would say that you'd be hard pressed to find a CrossFit gym that this shows up regularly. How often do we regularly do an isometric midline movement, right? In CrossFit, most of it's dynamic. It's toe to bar, knee to elbow, GHD sit-ups. That's kind of typical. So what you're asking of an athlete on the descent and on the way back up is to isometrically contract their midline so that they maintain perfect chest position throughout the whole thing. So one, if you're not doing isometric work, you're probably gonna get fatigued over time. And it's probably gonna adjust your position, and you don't start the rep perfect. You're not gonna end perfect. So, like I said, if your knees cave in on the way down, they come back out in the same spot. That's a mobility issue. Let's say the knees track all the way down, they come back in on the way up. Now you know that your hamstrings are the cause, and any hamstring exercise is going to help you, right? Like glute ham raises are phenomenal for that. Stiff leg deadlift variations, you want to do sumo, you want to do conventional, you want to do deficits, you want to do off of pins or off the ground, you want to do chain band combinations, just because you want it to come on in all different areas. Because if you do straight weight, it works the hardest at the bottom. If you do chain weight, that's a really that is a constant, like abrupt load where it is evenly accelerating through range, and it's really good for the middle. And if you're really weak near the top of the movement, bands are phenomenal because they come on the hardest at the top. So those three different things hit different areas. So all you have to do is watch where your athlete is slowing down, where they're losing speed or where they break position, what muscle group or what area is involved in that, and then that's what you hit, right? Because I want to keep speed all the way through the range. So any hamstring exercise is going to help. Some are going to help for some people more than others, depending on where their strengths and weaknesses are, but any hamstring exercise works for that. When we talk about looking at the thruster, the hips and glutes not being fast enough, yes, you can do like hip bridges, but really a Dimmel's perfect for that because you're doing the exact same movement. Again, that's where I'm really going to like band tension, because that band's going to suck you down at a fast rate of speed, and when you reverse it and it's real hard at the top, it's going to give a real violent snap at the top. When you can take the band off of it,
trying to fight it and control it down, the band's sucking it down. And
it's sucking it down. Faster down, faster up. I take a basketball.
Midline contract a hell of a lot harder too, because
way more violent.
Yeah.
So if I take a basketball and I let it drop, it only bounces so high. If I throw it down, it bounces a lot higher. Basketball doesn't have muscle. It has elastic properties that store kinetic energy. So the faster down, the faster up, right? And when you're doing a rep, the least amount of time you have that rep in your hand, the more likely you are to make that rep. So when you do band tension for the Dimmels, it sucks you down at a faster rate of speed. You store greater amounts of kinetic energy. That creates a greater reversal speed, which is known to be a wonderful thing to have in sport. And it creates a faster reversal speed, which means you get that ball out of your hands in a shorter time period, which you have less time under tension with that rep, allowing you to get more repetitions done in the same amount of time, and so you're picking up a faster score. You are also training your body to store greater amounts of kinetic energy. If you can get your body to store 10-15% more kinetic energy, and I've told you before, we've done experiments with Division I athletes, and we were literally storing kinetic energy almost 4 times the amount that they were, right? So when you're looking at that situation, if I can get you to be 20% more kinetic energy storage, that is free energy. That basketball is not getting worn out from you throwing it on the ground harder, okay? It doesn't have any muscle. It's not working. It's elastic properties in the rubber that are the similar type of elastic properties that you have in your soft tissue and your tendons. So we are getting you to store more kinetic energy, faster reversal speed, more repetitions in a shorter time period, and you're not using more energy to get that done, okay? But our accessories, it's very simple. Look at where's the break of position, where's the loss of speed. Once you see those two things, you can put whatever accessory movement you need to into that movement. And the more variety, the better, because you will see, say Justin and I train together, and we have another training partner. We're all similar strength deadlifters, or we can get, say thrusters, get 100 thrusters in a very close time. We're all within a few seconds of each other, right? So we're similar output, But a coach can sit there and watch where we lose speed at, and let's say we can't do that. Let's say we're not smart enough for that. It's simple. Justin and I and our training partner, we do a bunch of different, say we do 10 different types of stiff leg variations over the next 10 weeks. And we're all within 5-10 pounds of each other on all of them, except for there's one that Justin is 30 pounds stronger than the rest of us at. There's one that I'm 40 pounds weaker than everybody else is at, and there's another one our other partner's weaker at. Okay, once it's outside that 5-10 pound difference, now we know the one that Justin uses is not good for him. It's in a strength for his. It's not going to help fix a problem. The one that it was the hardest for me, I need to come up with every variation of that and hit my hamstrings every way that that did, because that is where my weakness lies. And once I can catch up to Justin on that movement, I'm gold. I'm going to do really, really well. I'm going to see an increase in how a decrease in my time for 100 reps on the thruster. I'm going to see that, or wall ball, sorry. And I'm going to see that I'm going to be able to squat and deadlift more weight at that point. So that's why when you see us do stiff leg deadlift variations, whether it's a deficit, whether it's off the ground, whether it's on the ground, whether it's straight weight, band tension, chain weight, you see multiple different angles for our feet. You'll see different, apparatuses we use. That's why we will also use a belt squat machine, because the one thing I love about a belt squat machine, I'll stand on top of boxes. I'll use a neutral grip handle like you'd use in a low row machine, and I like to use. I use band. I use straight weight sometimes. I use band and straight weight. My favorite is all band tension, especially if someone needs to fire their glutes faster and their hips faster. All band tension is where it's at for that one. I go into deficit and I create as much velocity and I try to outrun that band and snap those hips real hard. So we can really hit anywhere we want. It's not just a stiff leg variation. Don't think of just stiff leg like, oh, it hits my hamstrings and glutes. Yes, it does. They're not all created equal. Where do you need the work at?
So we are basically just breaking down this movement right now. We're talking about the wall ball, and so far we've talked about, the bottom of the squat, and you're noticing in this hypothetical scenario, the athlete's knees are coming in, which probably means they're getting pulled onto their toes, so their hamstrings are definitely weak. They're not being utilized properly. We talked about GHRs. So the GHR, if you guys don't know, GHD machine. Hopefully, if you're following this. But the GHD machine, you basically flip over, you put your knees on the backside or up towards the top of the pad, and then you bend exclusively at the knee joint, and you use your hamstrings to curl you back up. Your body should stay pretty hollow throughout the entire process. Now there's that, and then there's the inverse curl, which is a machine that Lou invented. Not a lot of gyms have it. Shane has it. I have it in my gym. Can you talk a little bit about the difference and how that would hit? Because I do like the inverse curl for people getting down a little bit faster, because they have that weighted assistance, or even just that pad to be able to get down faster, and then they can fire up faster. I've noticed with the GHRs, there's a slower eccentric portion to that.
It's called fear.
Great. Yeah, what's that?
So it's called fear.
There's the fear aspect.
Yeah.
But what I notice anecdotally is I can get more hamstring volume out of people with the inverse curl versus the GHR, because as you know, right, and as hopefully most of you listening know, slow eccentrics, they're great for bodybuilding. They tear down tissue. They make you sore as shit. That's the purpose, though. You're tearing it down, and then you're building and repairing. Sometimes with our CrossFit athletes, their hamstrings, and this is probably exclusively to our programming, their hamstrings start to become a real issue when they're doing wall balls and things at high reps, because it's almost hard for them to get down on top of their hamstrings because they're so big that they are riding that line, that parallel line. So I know you've talked about this a little bit with programming for athletes. Hey, we need to get somebody stronger. Maybe we need to grow a muscle bigger. So can you talk about how you would use those two elements for that?
So, if you look at the programming we put out, we put a lot of variety into the programming. So what you'll end up seeing is that we cover so much variety because we need everybody to make improvements in their hamstrings. And like I said, Justin might need a slightly different exercise than I do. They're all going to work. Some are going to work better for us than others. And what you will see is we can adjust rep schemes. So I would like an off season for most athletes need bigger hamstrings. So we're going to do sets of 20, something like that. If we came up and the games was coming up, I'm ooh, there's going to be some heavy lifts in the games. We can go down to sets of 10. We're not going to build as much muscle mass in the hamstrings with 10 reps as we are going to do 20, but we're going to build more strength into that without putting body weight on. Athletes that are already kind of on the big side for CrossFit, and we can't make them any bigger because they're not going to win the games. They're just too big for it. If they gain any more size, then we can go into lower rep schemes on the same exact movements, but we will not get as much muscle mass because we're not in the sweet spot for muscle mass for the lower body. And then, so we do this by rep scheme. We constantly adjust the hamstring movements or every body part that we do, and this is to make sure that, look, this template this is what we put out for our training. You know, it's one thing if you worked one-on-one with me, I can specify that one thing, right, for you to get there. We laid it out so everybody, once you follow this long enough, will be balanced out because we hit every angle imaginable. Okay, so we adjusted through rep schemes. And then when you talk about equipment like Justin was talking about with the inverse curl, okay, so here's what I'll tell you. I always say this. I love CrossFit because you can do it out of a gym, out of your garage. You don't need much equipment to do it. You can get phenomenal shape with hardly any equipment. Kids can have fun racing go-karts and not have a lot of money in racing. But if you want to be the best in the world, look at Formula One. They have the biggest budgets in the world. They have the highest tech tools, and they have anything they want to get the job done. So then when you look at people like Justin in his gym, he has inverse curl in a CrossFit gym. Why is that the case? Well, you have a glute ham raise, right? Because they're in every CrossFit gym. True, they are. But what you do have with a glute ham raise is that it is very difficult for most people. So most people are really slow on the negative. This isn't bad if we're trying to put muscle mass on. That's not a problem. But the benefit of the inverse curl, it hits a little different. The glute ham raise will be more in the muscle belly, like right in the middle, kind of the whole mass of the hamstring. The inverse curl hits really right behind the knee. That first couple inches of the hamstring, it hits really hard, which is really great for the acceleration off the ground, the first few inches off the ground when you're pulling. But what it's great for is, like Justin was saying, is you have a weight to counterbalance you. You can also actually set it up to put the weight against you to come up, but you better be able to do a Nordic curl first without any assistance, which most people can't do.
What? Do you do that?
Yeah, you can. I've had athletes who could do it, but you're talking a handful. You're talking world record horizontal squat and a handful.
I just got to the point to where I don't need weight, and I can't imagine fucking loading that thing in the opposite direction.
Which, not needing weight is great. I mean, there's only a handful of people who do that, but it gets really exclusive when you start putting weight against your back and coming up in that, right? So now I give you another thing to start trying. Now I know how your wheels are going to be turning now for that one, right? Yeah, so the nice thing is, when you have the weight on, it's not scary. You can accelerate out, and what Justin was talking about is you'll actually accelerate faster on the negative phase of the lift, and then when you reverse it, you'll have more stored kinetic energy, and you'll be able to pop and reverse that direction really fast. So it is a really good attribute to have for sports like Olympic lifting, and there's other times where it is beneficial in CrossFit in different WODs. So, we not only take accessories to maintain perfect position. We don't only take accessory movements or special exercises to optimize leverage. We also do it to optimize speed through all range of motion and optimize qualities for different types of lifts and different types of movements that would come across in CrossFit. Not all lifts are created equal. Some have much higher velocities than others. We have Olympic lifting, we have powerlifting, we have strongman, we have gymnastics. We have high repetitions. We have a lot of different things that happen in CrossFit. Stored kinetic energy helps every single individual, whether you're an Olympic lifter doing a high-speed movement or you're doing something like Murph, to where every step you take, the thicker your tendons are, the more efficient they are at storing kinetic energy. You're using less energy to get the same amount of work done. Every athlete, whether you're an endurance athlete or you're a strength athlete or a generalist, doesn't matter, you should really want to increase tendon thickness and its efficiency at storing kinetic energy. And I'm just going to kind of tell a story real quick because I think it's something that, on here, I don't know if I told about the guy who went down in a squat in my gym. I don't know if I talked about that.
Maybe. But...
So I had a guy that, he's a high 1,100 pound squatter, and he was getting ready for a meet. And when we talk about injuries, it almost never happened in my gym. This is a story I'll talk about. I had one other injury. I've had just a couple, over like 18-year time period. And you're talking about, 140 plus world records in powerlifting. We push the limits, okay? One athlete had a drug issue before they got into powerlifting, and they had a bone density issue, which I did not know about. And they broke their arm on the way down on the bench. Literally nothing was wrong. They were in perfect position. We did get them come back a year later and hit bigger weight, so, that ended up working out anyway. Not that you want to do that, but it was something that was going to happen because they didn't even know they had a bone density issue from their drug use. But a guy that I had is funny because he trained at Westside for a long time, and Louis passed away, and he came to my gym, and he was traveling from Columbus to Cincinnati and training multiple days a week at my gym. You know, so he's going down to squat. We decided to go to 1,040 that day, and both of him and I were on the same page. Like, hey, we're 9 weeks out in prep. This is enough. We'll just put some velocity on this one. We don't need to go real heavy. At this point yet. Because we want longevity, we don't want someone getting hurt. So we literally just took an easy day. He happened to get hurt on the easy day.
An easy day of over 1,000 pounds for a squat. That's
yeah, right. So he gets up about 95% of the way through the squat, 95, 97%. I mean, he's almost at lockout. He screams and goes down. So go over to him. What do you feel? He's like, I detached my patella tendon. So I reach down by his knee and I feel, and I'm like, no, you did not. I go, something's going on because you have about 3 inches above your knee where there's no tissue, but it's not balled all the way up, right? So, we carry him out to his truck. He drives back to Columbus. There's a sports surgeon that he goes to.
He drives back to Columbus.
yeah, right? Like, he drives back an hour and 45 minutes,
Fucks his leg up on a 1,000-pound squat, gets in the car, drives himself back. What the fuck?
Yeah, well, we knew that there was a good sports surgeon there, and we knew that his girlfriend worked at that hospital, and so we knew they could get him in to see him like immediately, and we didn't want to send him to anybody because he's a professional athlete, so you don't want to have the wrong surgeon.
It's so casual. You're like, 1,000-pound easy day, blows his leg out, fucking gets in a car, drives himself back to a hospital.
Well, it's like your job, right? At the end of the day, if you're a professional, you get the job done. Feelings don't really matter. They're feelings. That doesn't matter. You do what's the optimal and best situation, and you deal with it, right? So it's just what's expected. You go to the better surgeon, so you have a chance to come back and do some cool things. So surgeon comes in, does an MRI, takes a while to come back in. My buddy's like, he comes in, he goes, man, I contacted all kinds of surgeons that I know, really looked into this. He goes, you didn't tear your patella tendon. He goes, this is an injury I've never seen before. He goes, first off, he said, I've never seen tendons like yours. He goes, your patella tendon is thicker than my thumb. He goes, I've never seen anything like it. Now, Louis, well, I guess I'll get to this part in a second. So he goes, actually, good news. He goes, no meniscus damage, no ACL, no MCL, no, goes, no damage to anything in the knee structurally. He goes, your knee structure is perfect. He said, your patella tendon is still attached. And so I was like, well, why do I have a gap here? He goes, your tendon is so strong. He goes, it ripped your shin bone out. It's still attached. We just got to screw your bone back together. Yeah. So
that's ridiculous.
So he calls me because I didn't go with him to Columbus. He calls me up and he's like tells me the story and he goes, sounds like the old man was right again because Louis always used to tell us he goes like if you train your tendons properly, your tendons will become stronger than bone. He's like, well, old man was right again, But it's funny, like I can't tell you how many times I've had athletes go in and if they say like they just got like had a health issue and they get an MRI and something, it's like, man, do you see your tendon here? Like, man, your tendons I've never seen tendons that thick before, you always hear that, they always talk about the bone density on DEXA scans and stuff like that, and they always talk about the tendon thickness. The thicker and stronger your tendons are, the less likely you are to get hurt, the more kinetic energy they store. How is that not an advantage? If you're not using accommodating resistance and you're not doing speed work, you're doing yourself a massive disservice, okay? Absolutely massive. If I can get you to store 20% more kinetic energy, which I can get you to store a lot more than that, your efficiency on wall balls, thrusters like that go through the roof. You will pick up more repetition before you have to stop. You'll get real repetition in a shorter time period, but your resiliency to injury goes through the roof, okay? That athlete bounced back quick, had full use back, pretty fast, especially for that type of injury, really fast.
So we got hamstrings, we got hips. We talked a little bit about midline. And so we're kind of breaking down the wall ball here.
All right, so let's talk about spinal erectors. We do face down, side to side on GHDs.
Why is that important for, I don't know, CrossFit, for wall balls? Why are spinal erectors important?
So when you look at your spinal erectors, like basically your back straps going up along your spine, okay? when you look at that, they will help with the position of your hips, so your hips aren't tilting and getting off. They will maintain a better chest position, so you can be more efficient at throwing that ball and stay in a good position instead of wanting to drop your chest over time.
Imagine that could make you breathe better too if you were doing high reps of things and you had
Thousand
spinal
percent.
records.
Ultimately, right? Optimal position optimizes everything, not just output, not just speed, not just efficiency per repetition, the least amount of energy you can utilize, but also allowing you to get more air in because your chest is up and not down, and you're not going back behind you, so much, or out in front
So
of
a
you, I should
person
say.
who works a lot on building their capacity would more readily be able to express that capacity with thick, strong spinal erectors that keep their chest upright.
Well, look at it this way. If you have stronger spinal erectors, you maintain better position for Olympic lifting. You're less likely to bow your back. You maintain a better overhead position. Same thing with deadlift and squat. But let's look at like getting on a echo bike or any kind of bike, right? If you look at cyclists are thin, lean, but they don't have their hip to waist ratio is much thicker than what you'd think it would be. Their trunk is thicker than you would think. They are straight up and down. They don't taper like most small people. And the reason why is because they have strong obliques, strong spinal erectors, and why is that the case? Because they want their hips to stay level and they want to look like a sewing machine when they're going. They don't want their hips going back and forth because they're losing energy. So if you have 50 cal for time or you're going for long distances, it doesn't matter. We want as much energy transfer into the pedals, which means the hips can't move. The more the hips move, the less energy transfer. We spend a lot of time in bike stuff and in CrossFit. It shows up at every games. It's going to be there. It doesn't matter whether it's an endurance movement or not. Let's talk about health. Okay, I was working with some people for NFL, right? This is something like that came through, and something that I learned from Lou is sometimes I look at other sports to get someone better at their sport. I know that might sound weird, but we were looking at one season for the NFL. They were having a lot of hamstring tears right up by the glute. Okay. And so we're taking a look at that, and it's like, man, their hamstring tear rate is higher than Olympic caliber sprinters. Well, Olympic caliber sprinters are faster in acceleration than football players are, right? So let's take a look at the build. You ever see Olympic sprinters on the line? It looks like they have pythons up their back, right? The thicker and stronger those spinal erectors are and the stronger their obliques are, the less those hips move side to side, again, dissipating energy instead of putting that energy into the pavement and accelerating quicker, okay? So what I did with, what I said is like, their low backs aren't strong if their abs aren't strong enough. Because you ever notice when you see a sprinter, you can see their abs through their singlet? They have thick, full abs, thick, full obliques, thick spinal erectors going down their back. That is all to stabilize the trunk. Running the 100 is very simple as far as technique goes. It's not gymnastics, right? Once you learn how to leave the blocks correctly, once you get your timing on that correct, once you learn to stay as low as possible, as long as possible, and you optimize your stride and your running technique, the only thing that these people can do is transfer as much energy to the pavement as possible. They want to extend their acceleration phase and shorten their maintenance phase. And when they do that properly, that's when they're going to go faster and hit, world-class times. And so you're not going to go to the Olympics with weak spinal erectors, weak abs, weak obliques. You're not going to make it. So the thing about football is that there's more to it than just the simplified output. All the 100 meters is output, right? We're structurally building someone and set up their protocol for output to display that power in acceleration. Football, you have some people who see the game really well. They can read plays, they can understand what their opponents are, what they're good at, what they're bad at, they can expose weaknesses, they can be very agile, great hand-eye coordination. There's just a lot more to it, so you can get away with some weaknesses for a time period. If you want your guys to actually run faster, though, you're going to want their abs, their spinal erectors and obliques to look like that of a sprinter, okay? So he starts saying, hey, well, their abs and their spinal erectors are weak. Oh, they're not weak. No, football players aren't weak. I'm not saying pro football players are weak. I'm just saying for what they're doing, that's the problem. So what we're having is, people are accelerating.
Everybody wasn't at the same caliber because that's basically what happens, right? In the NFL, you have absolutely freak humans genetically dispositioned to
Hmm.
be awesome. If they, I heard John Welborn say it best one
Hmm.
time. He was like, if these guys never lifted weights, they would have been in the NFL.
Yeah.
And while there's some degree to that
Hmm.
of truth, the fact of the matter is that they are lifting weights.
Hmm.
So they're doing things maybe that aren't optimal to their sport, but because they're genetic
Hmm.
anomalies, they can still get an adaptation that's insane. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean that it's necessarily laid out properly and is going
Hmm.
to prevent injury. Obviously, we see that. That was one season example of hamstring
Hmm.
tears. But how many times has the season been plagued short for ACL injuries?
Yeah.
It's like that's kind of crazy. And all these guys are doing insane amounts of agility work, and it's like, is that going to help, or is it making the individual stronger and attacking those hamstrings? And had they attacked the hamstrings appropriately,
Hmm.
you're talking about saving hundreds of millions of dollars
Yeah.
of investments when it comes down to that, because now they're probably not going to detach a hamstring. They're probably not going to blow their ACL out because they don't have that lateral instability. Um, so
And just like Wellborn's comment, and the interesting thing about Wellborn is, he'd always talk to Lou, and the big thing with him is, Lou got his, talking about how he got his deadlift way up and other movements, and he always said like he had a line. If his deadlift stayed above 700, he stayed healthy and did not get hurt in sport. But he said if his deadlift dropped below that, then he was susceptible to injuries, and that's kind of how he decided when he was going to retire. Because he's like, before I could keep my deadlift above 700 and I could play, football. He goes, then it got old enough to where I could either have my deadlift above 700 or I could play football, but I couldn't do both, and that's when I started noticing injuries and start getting irritation. So, if you know
it's wild that he
John,
felt like 700 pounds was the minimum pull to be able to play against these people who are just absolute genetic freaks.
it's test retest, and he, was smart enough to understand what his body was capable of, or I should say, not smart was capable of. Smart enough to understand where healthy was and where it wasn't healthy. And if you look at John, he's a good sized guy, and he played, pro football. He moves really well. Most guys that you see who retire from the NFL, they move really poorly. Their bodies are so beat up that I do believe that strength allowed him to retire and move well after retirement, because he does move well. And I was working with a guy in the NFL. He had a brother who also played in the NFL, and kind of going along with what Wellborn said is that he was like, he's like, there's two type of athletes in the NFL. He's like the ones who work really hard every day because they're afraid someone's going to take their spot. And he goes, the guys who never work out. And he goes, I'm one of the guys who have to work as hard as I can to stay in the game. Now, he was a very good football player. He was a starter and everything. He was first string. And he goes, because I know if they ever find their way in the gym, I don't have a job anymore. He goes, but they usually don't. So you either have the hard worker or the person who's just a genetic gift. But either way, a lot of times they're so worried about, hey, working on certain drills and working around, agility. Usually by the time these guys in the NFL, they don't need as much of that as you think they do. What they do need is fortifying themselves so they can stay healthy longer. And the more seasoned they are, the more experienced they are, the more dangerous they become. And they actually
The
become...
whole life getting really
Yeah.
good at the
Yep.
fundamentals. At that point, it's just like, hey,
Yep.
can you remain healthy enough
Well,
to execute for
look at Mayweather.
seasons?
From fight 30 to fight 50, how much more work did he need on boxing? I'm not saying not to hit mitts. I'm not saying not to spar. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I'm saying is, if you look at Mayweather from fight 40 to fight 50, he probably didn't become a better boxer. But if you could give him, 10% better conditioning and give him 10% more power and give him 10% more speed, that's what it would make someone more dangerous, right? His fight IQ was so high and his ability was so high that you're fighting for a 0.25% improvement in skill set. But yet you could have probably taken him, changed his physical training, and got massive percentages of improvement out of him, right? So when we're looking at CrossFit athletes, it's the same thing I'm talking about these other guys. Like, we literally had people in the NFL working spinal erectors, obliques, abs harder, and all of a sudden their hamstring issues are going away, because what was happening is they're sprinting and their hips are shifting, and when the hips shifted up, if it did it kind of at the wrong time when they're putting power to the pavement, they're stretching that hamstring on a really far stretch, and that's what was popping that hamstring up by the glute. If we can get those hips to stabilize out, not tilt, not move side to side so much, then you're not going to pull that tissue as far, and that's less likely to damage that tissue. It's no different than that person has the tilted hips and they go to do stiff leg deadlift and they can barely get to their knees, and like, man, my hamstrings are so tight. It's like, well, they are tight, but actually your hips are sitting tilted, and they were already in a shortened position, already elongated before you even started to try that stretch, right? So, we utilize these movements to optimize an individual's output, but also optimize their longevity. So, that spinal erector work keeps you safe in your heavy lifts. That spinal erector work will allow you to maintain better positions throughout different movements and loads. It will allow you to put more power to the pavement in your runs, because running does show up in CrossFit. It does allow you to do that. The same thing when we're showing up in the cycling. Strong spinal erectors are great for rowing too. Okay, so now it's like we look at spinal erectors. What do we do for midline? We do speed work for midline. We do max effort work for midline. We do isometric work for midline. So what do you need during the WOD? We got you covered. Instead of just doing high repetition movements for muscular endurance, we increase the strength, speed, and isometric capacity of the midline movement. Now let's go up farther into shoulders, right? So what do we do for shoulders? Well, we max out for shoulders. The higher our max goes, the lower percentage of our max that we're utilizing, so we can maintain better positions for longer time periods. So how often do you max out your overhead work? How often do you do? We do speed work for overhead work, so we create more velocity in a shorter time period. We optimize our velocity. We try to optimize the force velocity curve as much as we can when band and chain work, so we are going through range of motion with accommodating resistance, so that our nervous system adapts the firing pattern to optimize speed and acceleration all the way through. Since we do work to make our shoulders stronger, but we also do rear delt work and stuff for shoulder health, when you go overhead or you bench press, you're working side to front delt a lot. So I want to ask you guys, how often do you guys go overhead in CrossFit? People tell me all the time. How much rear delt work do you do? And people just look at me. Well, we don't. Well, why would you train your front and side delts all the time and never do anything for your rear delts? You need to have balance.
That is having high-level CrossFit athletes come in to the gym and doing a side-lying rear delt raise is probably one of the most humbling things that happens to them. Because I'll demonstrate it and I'm like, hey, this is what it should look like. You got full articulation of the joint all the way across, and I'll hand them like a 2.5 pound plate, and they can't do it. They can't budge, and it's like, there is where you're lacking capacity. There is where you can make up substantial ground just in your overhead movements. We're not even talking about anything else, but just being able to unlock that, and then to be able to strengthen that area, because they're so overcompensated here that's just completely turned off, and they don't even know how to fire it or use it. And I mean, when you talk about the shoulder, the whole shoulder, you want all the muscles being worked, not just one part of it, because it is going to fatigue faster.
It's a very complex joint, and you better have it balanced, otherwise you'll have issues. And so
I mean, the more you do with the front delt, the shoulder, like the more likely you are to tear a pec, pop a bicep, like all those other things that happens.
Well, when you fatigue a shoulder out in competition, you will utilize other muscle groups that aren't as an efficient position, or maybe shouldn't be utilized at that time. Like, we saw the CrossFit workout where people were doing ring dips and they were tearing their pecs. It was because it was like a quarter mile. It was too short not to get them all without dropping, but too long to do that. So a lot of people who had muscular pecs, when their triceps fatigued, they leaned forward, put it in their pecs, and they were fatigued, so they would just drop at a fast rate of speed, and that's why people tore their pecs in that workout. So they weren't ready for the workout. It wasn't the workout was bad by CrossFit, it was just they weren't prepared for it. So, now we're talking about reasons why our shoulders are more stable, they're healthier, and by the way, if, let's say performance-wise, if it didn't help, if it just bounces out your shoulder and it gives you better longevity, you have 1 6-week shoulder injury a year. That's 6 weeks of being down. Another 6 weeks to get back to where you were. That's 12 weeks down. Over 4 years of CrossFit, that's 48 weeks. It's almost a year of not progressing forward. That's why your competitors are getting better than you. Okay? So then after we get through shoulders, we look at triceps. What do you guys do for triceps? We hit triceps really heavy. We're going to go anywhere from 5 reps to 200 reps for triceps. So we have muscular endurance. We have strength in them. We do speed work that involves our triceps. We also have, where do you hit your triceps? we hit the mass of our triceps, we hit the anconeus, the extensor stabilizer, so the mass helps drive. So once our shoulders are starting to run out of speed, we pick up that speed for that thruster or wall ball through our tricep. The beginning of the tricep hitting in is the mass of the tricep, and that last inch or two before a lockout is your extensor stabilizer anconeus right behind the elbow, helps out with that dramatically. That gives you more speed and pop in the ball, which allows you to get more repetitions in a faster rate of speed. The other thing that you'll notice for people who don't train the anconeus extensor stabilizers, which we are the people who brought that to CrossFit, we are, Westside Barbell was the one who really pioneered really pushing that area of the elbow. We did it so we wouldn't detach our triceps underneath heavy benches. But what I noticed in CrossFit is a lot of people have elbow pain right on the inside of the elbow, and majority of them have that from either Olympic lifting or gymnastics. And what you'll notice, if you have that pain right here, I will tell you the inside of your bicep will be really tight. If you go to work on that, it'll be painful, and the outside of your tricep will be really painful. And the reason why is this, is you have poor stabilization of the elbow, and you can't maintain good positions in the Olympic lifts and in the gymnastics movements. And your bicep and tricep are tightened up on opposing sides to create a cross stabilization of the elbow to try to stabilize the elbow, and that's why you get that pinch pain feeling on the inside of the elbow. That means that you have a weakness that you have to fix. You have to work on the anconeus so that you can strengthen that to create greater stability in the elbow, and then you will see that pain goes away, and it will also help you with your lockout in gymnastics movements, Olympic lifting, and other movements as well. So you can look at just a thruster and wall ball, one simple movement, and you can see that we put a lot of effort and a lot of movements, a lot of accessories, speed work, max work. We put a lot of things to help that one movement, and that is that way for all the things that you do in CrossFit.
And there's some other things that you commonly program as well. And I think intent matters. When you're talking about like a banded push down, a lot of people, they'll just use one band and they'll put both hands in there. I like how you do it, where you have one for each tricep so that it's working independently. You're not overcompensating with the shoulders. And then there's another piece that people really don't enjoy. I see this every time we do a course is, hey, at the end of your 100 reps, you're going to hold it for a minute lockout. You're reinforcing lockout, which is great, but you're also, at that point, you've gone through 100 tricep push downs, probably a number that most people aren't comfortable or familiar with. You've introduced, the lactates there, they're burning, and now they're holding and stabilizing. Well, you think about a workout like this one that just got released, and the only way to finish this thing is to go completely unbroken. So if you're at that level and you have that capacity with your legs, with your lungs, with your midline, but your shoulders are fatiguing because you're not used to being in held positions for long periods of time, like 100 push downs and then hold it at the bottom. Again, I said this last time we were talking, but like one of the things that I hate the most that you program is a barbell JM press for 100 reps, and you have to hold it at lockout every time you want to break. And it's like, well, that's not a fucking break, Shane. But what it does do is it keeps you under tension the entire time, and those muscles are learning, and you're learning psychologically that it's okay to be there. Yeah, the muscles are, you're talking about, we train different strengths. We train speed strength, we train strength endurance, we train absolute strength. That endurance element of it and being there, if you haven't been there before and you're not used to going there, we go there multiple times a week with push downs, with JMs, with lockout holds, with various different positions where people have to just go there. They're used to it mentally, they're used to it physically. So when you're in this fixed position and you're going, you can throw your arms around a little bit to try to reduce some of that, but it's going to start pulling in your biceps, it's going to start pulling in your shoulders, and then you have to hold the ball and go over the step overs. If you're not used to that mentally, you can give up really quick.
Here's the thing. You would love to prepare for a fight before you get in a fight, right? What you'll notice is like someone who's not good at a fight, they just want to get it over with. If someone notices they're way better than someone else, they might pull you, drag you into deep waters, and really teach you a lesson because they can. The thing is, our output is a series of experiences. Those series of experiences are dependent on What experiences do we choose to have, and how hard do we decide to push through those experiences? Okay, so if you look at a power lifter to break a world record, it's simple. You just have to do something no other human's ever done before. Okay, so you think that you're not going to have to go to a mental spot or be uncomfortable? You're kidding yourself. You're going to get uncomfortable. So that exercise, as an example, sometimes I will do stuff. There is a physical component that it does flood full of blood in that area, but it teaches you where to find as much comfort as you can to stay in the game and learn how to deal with it and what you can deal with. When you fight, if you kickbox, you grapple, whatever, they're the best in the world at some point are going to be put in an uncomfortable position, and if they panic, they will lose. They have to keep their head about them. Same thing in CrossFit Games. What if you're down to the wire? The winner of this event wins the games. You have someone there's a 1 point difference. They're going head to head, and it is the most vicious workout they've ever done, and they feel like they're at their limit, but they're going neck and neck. Someone's got to break first. Okay? And the person who has experience, when we put together workouts in a manner that allows you to gain those experiences, you realize, this is just another one of those things. It's all right. I can deal with it. I can go through with it. You search for wherever you can find that comfort, and no matter how minimal it is, and you let that just relax you enough to win. Okay, but if you don't have experience in it when you show up on that day and the other person does, you're probably going to be the one who breaks, who stops, and the other person's going to go and get that win. And then, hopefully you can recover from that psychological state, and I think that person's just mentally tougher than you, because some people will regulate to that. Maybe they're just more experienced. The example he used, I love doing this at courses. We'll do 100 of the course, but in my gym we'll do 100 to 200 reps. And then what I like is at least a minute, or shoot for a minute, but I want max time. He talked about, hey, look, if you have a CrossFit gym, and you don't have enough bands for everybody to have 2 for each hand, that's okay. 1 band is good. It works really good. Does it work? Is it optimal? No. That's okay. It's what you have. You got to work with what you have. But I like 2 bands because what you'll notice on some people, one arm might have a harder time locking out than another one. And I want to know that. So I like independently, so I can make sure both are getting equal amount of work, and I can notice if one has a deficiency over the other one. So we'll pick a weight that we can do 20 to 30 reps without stopping, and then every time you stop, 3 deep breaths, and go again as fast as you can. And it is, as fast as you can move that. And then, say the first time you stop 4 times. Well, next time you come back to this finisher, I want you to try to stop 2 or 3 times. And the next time, you eventually get down to 1. And the first day you hit it nonstop, you will never have the same tension again. You will either go up in tension or you'll step back farther. So I literally look at, we have the typical 4x6 rubber flooring. I take the lines on that. You can even put some tape down and have some lines to have measurement if you want, or chalk or whatever it is. But I have lines that I know on my floor that I'm like, okay, now I'm back to here, now I'm back to here. Now when I move back 3 times, I will change the band tension, go to bigger band, and go back to the start position. And then I'll work my way back over time. But we never look back. The minute we do it 1 time nonstop, we go forward. What's that mean? I'm going to have a heavier band, and I got to go back at it again. I'm going to stop a few times, but I'm looking for my nonstop. My first year at Westside, I was literally, my set of 100 was, I stopped after 25 reps. And then by the end of the first year, I was using 3 times that strength band tension nonstop for 100. And it didn't really feel like hardly anything to me. It felt like a good blood flow and good pump. You learn how to clear lactic acid quicker by doing that consistently. You store, you get bigger kinetic energy storage because you introduce a lot of blood flow to the area to help heal the tendons because they have a very low blood supply to begin with. You will recover faster your triceps after workouts. The gift that gives you is very, it gives you a lot. You can recover quicker, you can get back to more workouts, you can run a higher volume of training, you clear lactic acid faster, you induce more blood to the area to heal the tissue faster, you get bigger, more kinetic energy storage. That one little thing that a lot of people like to forget is, man, I don't know how much time I gotta go. You don't have the 1 minute for 100 extensions, or 2 minutes for 100 extensions and 1 minute lockout. You don't have that. What are you doing there?
That's awesome, man. Let's wrap it up there. I got some max effort work that I'm going to be diving into here in a little bit.
Nice.
It's my max effort upper is my favorite, obviously.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm gonna enjoy some of that. you know, it's funny too because sometimes we'll have like new clients just walk in off the street, and there'll be a few of us getting there, you know, in there getting after a good full max effort, dynamic effort kind of day, and the gym looks like a fucking bomb went off.
Mm.
Because there's just shit everywhere, you know, and
Yeah.
it's like five dudes in there getting after it, just weights
Mm.
everywhere, bands, chains, all kinds of shit.
Mm.
Um, and you know, I had somebody ask, "Well, hey, is all this necessary?" No, it's not necessary. But if we want to get the most out of our training, this is what we utilize. And so some people try to skip setting up the accessories. They'll take the short route. They don't see the, you know, value in maybe adding the band or adding the chain to this thing and that thing. What I'll tell you is, even if it didn't work, which obviously it does, it stores greater amounts of kinetic energy. We can talk, you know, Shane talked about the different points of the lifts, all that shit. There's some fucking utility into setting all these things up and then putting it away too. Like that is conditioning, whether you realize it or not. Like especially
Mm-hmm.
after you've gone through and you've given everything you had into a
Yep.
max effort or a dynamic effort session, you look around and the gym's
Mm.
fucked, and then you have to put it all back together, and you're just like, man, I did not have more energy in me. And you find out real quick, like, especially because sometimes we run like right up to the class, and then we have to quickly like get all of our shit put away, so that the class can be set up and ready to go.
Mm.
And I'll tell you, that's conditioning in itself sometimes.
Well, you know what's funny is you said people try to create a shortcut, right? If a shortcut was optimal, it'd just be called the way.
Right, right.
You know, it wouldn't be called a shortcut. You know, so.
Hey, I
Cool.
did have a question for you before we break. I got these little mini bands here.
Mm-hmm.
I've been trying to do some different things with them. The
Mm-hmm.
obvious is like lower body stuff. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Good problem to have. I've ran out of dumbbells that like
Mm-hmm.
actually work for me now. When you know we're doing like our 8 rep
Mm-hmm.
dumbbells and things like that. I've only got them up to
Mm.
115. What do you think about taking it like this? So you just kind of run it through the shoulder like that,
Mhm.
and then pressing through with the dumbbell. You think
You
that
can
works?
do that. Depending on how strong those are, you can even put it between your wrists and do elbow out dumbbell presses to teach people how to pull the bar apart.
Yeah. Okay.
You know,
Cool.
and teach that movement of pulling the bar apart. Running around your shoulder through your hand. Yep. I mean, again, it's like
Doing
let's just have fun with it. Limit by
push-ups or
imagination.
like
Yeah.
banded push-ups and
Mm-hmm.
things. My triceps have gotten to the point to where like putting
Yep.
one in the hand and running it on the back does nothing. So I'll
Yep.
put it on T-pins, and then I can load up like
Nice.
3, 4, 5 bands on there, and then really get after it, and then have it definitely works the midline a hell of a lot harder too.
Yeah. Right.
That.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like running those on the T-pin. So I'm just trying to find creative ways to add some more.
Mm.
Well, some more for see, 'cause
Huh.
I don't know what my 8 rep dumbbell is. I just I
Mm-hmm.
ran out at 115s, and
Yeah.
at this point, like I'm there's
See, now you know why I have 180. Now you know I have 185s at my gym, right?
yeah, I need to come max out at your gym is what you're telling me.
Yeah.
I won't run out of dumbbells there.
Yeah. Right.
Oh, that's funny.
Cool.
All right, brother.
All
Well, I
right, man.
appreciate you. Let's do it
All
again
right.
next week.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.